Sarah and John were determined to find out more about the Miller family accident or murder. They went to the library and looked up old newspaper articles about the case. They learned that the Miller family had consisted of 4 members: the parents, David and Susan Miller, and their 2 children, Michael and Jessica. The accident had happened on a winter night 10 years before. The Miller family had been driving home from a Christmas party when their car skidded on the ice and crashed into a tree. David and Susan Miller were killed instantly. Michael and Jessica were taken to the hospital, but Michael died a few days later. Jessica survived, but she was paralyzed from the waist down. The police ruled the accident as an accident, but there were some rumors that it had been something more. Some people said that the Miller family had been targeted by a serial killer. Others said that the accident had been caused by a ghost or a curse. Sarah and John decided to visit Jessica Miller to see if she could tell them anything more about the accident. They found Jessica living in a nursing home. She was a kind and gentle woman, but she was also very withdrawn. Sarah and John asked Jessica about the accident, but she didn't want to talk about it. She said that she couldn't remember anything. Sarah and John were disappointed, but they didn't give up. They decided to investigate the accident themselves. They went back to the scene of the accident and searched the area around the tree. They found some old tire tracks, but that was all. They also went to the local police station and talked to the detective who had investigated the accident. The detective told them that the accident had been caused by a patch of black ice on the road. He said that there was no evidence of foul play. Sarah and John were still not convinced. They felt like there was more to the story than the police were letting on. They decided to talk to the people who had known the Miller family. They talked to their friends, neighbors, and co-workers. They learned that the Miller family was a happy and normal family. There was no indication that they had any enemies or that they were involved in anything illegal. Sarah and John were starting to think that they were on a wild goose chase, but then they talked to one of the Miller family's neighbors. The neighbor told Sarah and John that he had seen a strange man lurking around the Miller house on the night of the accident. He said that the man had been wearing a black coat and a hat. Sarah and John were intrigued. They asked the neighbor to describe the man in more detail, but he couldn't. He said that it had been too dark to see the man's face. Sarah and John were finally getting somewhere. They knew that there was a strange man lurking around the Miller house on the night of the accident. But who was he, and why was he there? They decided to keep investigating. They knew that they were getting closer to the truth, but they also knew that they were in danger. The man who had been lurking around the Miller house was still out there somewhere, and he was not going to be happy that they were investigating him. Sarah and John continued to investigate the Miller family accident. They talked to more people who had known the Miller family, and they searched the area around the scene of the accident again. They eventually learned that the strange man who had been lurking around the Miller house on the night of the accident had been the Miller family's gardener, a man named William Davis. Sarah and John went to William Davis's house to talk to him, but he wasn't there. They asked his neighbors if they knew where he was, but they didn't. Sarah and John realized that William Davis was probably on the run. They decided to call the police and tell them what they had learned. The police were skeptical at first, but they eventually agreed to investigate William Davis. They found out that William Davis had a criminal record. He had been convicted of assault a few years earlier. The police also found out that William Davis had been having an affair with Susan Miller. The affair had ended a few months before the accident, but William Davis had been angry and bitter about it. The police tracked down William Davis and arrested him. He was charged with the murder of David, Susan, and Michael Miller. William Davis went on trial and was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison. Sarah and John were relieved that William Davis had finally been brought to justice. They knew that they had played a role in his arrest, and they were proud of themselves. But they also knew that the silent house would still be there, standing alone on the hill, its dark windows staring out at the world below, and inside the house, The memories of the Miller family would remain,